These are just some thoughts, some updated thoughts, I should say, on this whole massacre nonsense. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because a lot has happened. A lot has changed since the last time I did this, referring to the massacre nonsense. M.K. Davis and I have parted ways, not very amicably, I must add, because certainly there have been things that I've said about him that perhaps I shouldn't have said about him. I mean, I did say a few things about him that I called him nuts and I called him crazy and all that. But you'd have to be crazy to believe this massacre nonsense that is actually true. I'm not going to go into all the specifics because I'm sure everybody knows about all the specifics over this, you know, the massacre nonsense and the people who said they shot something. You know, the people who say Bob Titmus was there when he wasn't. The people who say that just say all these loony things. You know, and I think Bob Gimlin has more than acquitted himself very well on both Larry Batson's show and also on MNBRT Radio. You can find both those archives at each of those respective shows. This is kind of a defense of Bob Gimlin. I've met Bob Gimlin. I've looked into the man's eyes. I don't think he was or is capable of having committed some sort of a massacre. I don't believe that at all. I believe that he was capable of anything like that. I don't believe that John Green had anything to do with being involved in some cover-up or some massacre. I don't believe that the late Roger Patterson, the late Bob Titmus, or the late Renee DeHinden had anything to do with it either. They are no longer around to defend themselves. Gimlin and Green are still around to defend themselves. So therefore, they are the ones that are being targeted by certain people, such as the GCBRO, M.K. Davis, and David Paulides, unfortunately, has jumped into the mix. And he seems to be sort of buying into this, unfortunately. And now Bobby Short. Bobby Short seems to be buying into it. Which I think is rather sad and unfortunate because at one time, and she still has an excellent website, but she had one of the best websites out there. But now she seems to be buying into this. She claims that Renee told her that more happened that day than we know about. And she calls anybody who questions that or questions her naive and you're just a kid. You haven't been around as long as I have in the Bigfoot community. You're just a kid. This is what she's told me, basically. She told me I'm just a kid and I don't know what I'm talking about, that I'm naive. I mean, it used to be just a difference of opinion between the two of us. But she still kind of respected my opinion. But then, without even informing me of it, she threw me off her email list. So I am no longer able to get her email newsletter, which is no big loss because it's not like I can't find all or most of the stuff that she has links to in her newsletter. And anything I can't find, Bill Green will find. But, I mean, I'm not really, it's no skin off my nose that I got thrown off of Bobby Short's email list. I'm just absolutely, I'm angry because you got groups like the GCBRO, and you got M.K. Davis, you got Bobby Short, basically accusing people of murder. They accused Bob Gimlin, they accused John Green, and they've accused people who aren't even alive to defend themselves anymore. The Massacre Nonsense is just that. It's nonsense. It's lunacy. It's lunacy. It's idiocy. It is absolute lunacy. The Massacre Nonsense, and that's exactly what it is. It's nonsense. And there are people who have taken me to task over this. Well, what I mean is, well, they did more than take me to task. They basically put my personal information out there on the internet for everybody to see. And they call me a fat slob, and they say that that when I'm posing for pictures with women, there's one that looks like she wants to get away from me, and I won't let her. You know, that's the kind of personal attacks that they've made on me, on Bill Miller, on Tom Yamarone, on Al Hodson. That's the kind of research that they do. Quote unquote research. I've been called a loudmouth troublemaker. Bill Miller has been called a loudmouth troublemaker. And I'm sick of it. I am absolutely sick of it. I mean, it's time to take a stand. It's time to stand up and say, no more. No more. I mean, most of the Bigfoot community thinks these people are lunatics. They're idiots. They are pariahs. The GCBRO, M.K. Davis, they are pariahs. David Paulides, he's starting to get into that position of being a pariah. Bobby Short starting to get into that position of being a pariah. And I think it's rather unfortunate. I think it's rather unfortunate to see these fine people buying into this nonsense. I mean, basically, MK threw me under the bus 2 years ago when all this nonsense first started coming out. And all I did was report on it on my blog. And I called it a massacre. And MK objected to that. But from what I understand from at least a couple of sources, and I'm not going to name those sources, he did indeed use the word massacre to describe what happened. Or what allegedly happened at Bluff Creek on October 20th, and possibly before October 20th, 1967. I mean, you've got two separate films which were spliced together to make a presentation with. The Patterson-Gimlin film and the Blue Creek Mountain footage. Two completely separate incidents. Two completely separate occurrences at two completely separate times. And yet, they are supposedly linked together. Any fool can see that there's fall colors in the PG film and there's summer colors in the BCM film. There is no possibility that both of those films are connected and that they're the same, because they're not. But the GCBRO and M.K. Davis would have you think so. There's people who would have you think that all this is a big conspiracy. There are those who would have you think that that these people are that they are murderers and that they're covering it up. It's terrible. It's just absolutely, it's lunacy, it's nonsense. And if I sound like I'm whining, well, I'm not. What I'm doing is I'm speaking out. I'm speaking out in defense of Bob Gimlin, in defense of John Green, in defense of those who have been mocked and made fun of. I'm speaking out in the defense of the late Roger Patterson, the late Bob Titmus, the late Renee DeHinden. This is nonsense, and we've got to put a stop to it. And I hope the Bigfoot community will do that very soon.